I see you're a student at Yale.
Yes, Your Honor.
And that's a very nice school. Prestigious.
Yes, Your Honor.
I understand that the defense is portraying this as a childish lark, a youthful indiscretion. Well, I take the law very seriously. And if there's one thing I have very little tolerance for, it's rich, privileged children viewing the world as their private playground. I don't care who you are. I don't care who your family is. When you commit a crime, Miss Gilmore, there must be consequences, period.
I'm rewatching Gilmore Girls for the cozy autumn vibes. And I know a lot of fans think the downfall of Rory began when she was willing to cheat with Dean so easily back in season 4, or when she stole the boat in season 5. But I think Rory's true downfall was always inevitable, and it started much earlier in season 1 during the Chilton years. And even though Gilmore Girl fans place the blame squarely on Lorelai's shoulders, my unpopular opinion is that the people in Stars Hollow deserve a lot of the blame too, since their unrealistic expectations about Rory caused her character development to stall. Let's talk about it.
I really miss Stars Hollow High.
You're kidding, right?
No. Chilton's just, I don't know, hard.
What do you care? You were always missed everything so easy at school. This should be a snap for you.
Across the Gilmore Girls series, we often see Rory's family and neighbors in Stars Hollow take Rory being smart as a given. As a matter of fact, smart is usually the main adjective that most of the people around her describe Rory as being. This wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing if it were done in moderation, or if the writers had given Rory's character any other noticeable personality traits throughout Gilmore Girls. But the fact that Rory is only seen as the smart, nice girl leads her to use her intelligence as a crutch. When this happens, Rory stops developing as a character. And in later seasons of Gilmore Girls, when her intellect is threatened, she ends up not knowing who she is, causing her to stumble and lose her way in life. Viewers can see early signs of Rory becoming lost when her intellect is threatened at Chilton. I first noticed it in the Deer Hunters episode in season 1, when Rory has a breakdown after Max refuses to let her take an English test because she's late to school. In the episode, Rory has this huge meltdown, screaming that she's been studying all night and Max has to let her take the test because of this. She randomly starts yelling at Paris and Tristan while the rest of her classmates watch, and Max has to basically drag her out of the classroom.
About the
I'm
test.
afraid you've missed the test.
No.
We start class promptly at 8:05.
No.
That's when I need people to be in their seats.
Please.
I'm sorry, it's the rules.
But you don't understand. I was up all night studying and then I missed my bus, so I had to drive.
Let's discuss this out.
What I found interesting about this scene is that the English test comes at the tail end of Rory switching schools. Before this episode, Rory was at her local high school in Stars Hollow, where everything was easy for her, and she was the smartest person in the class. But at Chilton, she's just one in a crowd of smart kids, and it's obvious that Rory is behind all her peers. The stark contrast in school environments is always glaring to me, because in Stars Hollow, Rory is literally the main character in town, and not just in the series. By this I mean that we never hear about any other teenagers in the town unless they are friends with Rory or have dated her, which ultimately makes Rory a minor celebrity in Stars Hollow, because she has no competition for the adults' attention. But at Chilton, the headmaster and her teachers aren't so easily won over. In fact, the headmaster outright tells Lorelai and Emily at their first meeting that Chilton may not be the best fit for Rory. This not only shocks Lorelai, but it also makes her try and work harder to keep up the image she has of Rory being a genius, even when reality shows her that maybe her daughter is just average. For Rory, the difference in environment is even more devastating, because up until she went to Chilton, she's constantly praised by her mother and the people in Stars Hollow. And when Emily and Lorelai try to brainwash Chilton's headmaster and Rory's teachers into having this type of blind hero worship on Rory's first day, it doesn't work. And I get it. Most parents want to believe that they gave birth to a prodigy and that their child is special. So I really don't fault Lorelai or Rory's grandparents for this idea initially. However, as Gilmore Girls goes on, I notice that the Gilmores' desire to only see Rory succeed at any cost is ultimately what leads to Rory not being able to take constructive criticism and her eventual failure in her 30s.
So, let's do this.
Yes, that is why I'm here. Should I have brought my laptop?
Well, first things first. If I take a chance on Rory Gilmore, what am I getting?
What?
If I hire you, tell me what Rory Gilmore would write about for Sandy Says.
Oh, if I worked here.
Sell me.
Sell. Okay, we're selling. That's a totally different outfit.
Chilton is the first place where Rory really receives pushback on her perceived intelligence, which is basically her entire identity. When thinking about this connection between Rory's identity and her being a gifted child, I immediately thought of the book, The Drama of the Gifted Child, The Search for the True Self by Alice Miller. In the book, Miller discusses how children who are seen as gifted and talented are often expected to meet the emotional and psychological needs of their parents. When this occurs, the gifted children don't often get their own needs recognized and nurtured throughout their childhood. This dynamic can result in the gifted child suppressing or never fully developing a true identity, or having a secure sense of self, since they are always attempting to meet the external expectations of their families and adult figures in their lives. And this can ultimately lead to deep psychological issues later in life. If we apply Miller's concepts to Rory, we can draw several parallels between her upbringing and the dynamics Miller describes for gifted children in her book. For example, Lorelai has high expectations for Rory when it comes to her academic achievement and success. As a single mother, Lorelai had Rory when she was a teenager, so she often projects her own desires and hopes for a better life onto Rory in the earlier seasons of Gilmore Girls. She does this by placing a lot of emphasis on Rory's intelligence and by her desire to see Rory go to prestigious schools like Chilton and Harvard. It also acts as a means for Lorelai to prove her own worth to Emily and Richard and the WASP society Lorelai ran away from as a teenager. These expectations place pressure on Rory to live up to Lorelai's dreams for her.
Rory dropped out of Yale.
What?
She dropped out of Yale and she moved in with my parents, who I went to for help, and they stabbed me in the back. Everything we worked for all these years, her whole future. She was supposed to have more than me. She was supposed to have everything.
From Miller's perspective, Rory's giftedness and perceived intelligence is the only thing acknowledged by others, and these characteristics becomes a tool Lorelai uses to constantly seek validation for her parenting skills. And like the other gifted children Miller describes in her book, Rory seems to unconsciously be tasked with fulfilling her mother's unspoken needs instead of developing any sense of who she is as a person, during her formative years on Gilmore Girls. The pressure deepens when Richard and Emily start taking an interest in her. When this happens, Rory also ends up trying to live up to her grandparents' expectations. We see this happen as she starts to step into the role of the good daughter. Richard and Emily never had starting in the later part of season 1 in Gilmore Girls.
Rory will be taking some time off from Yale. She will be moving into the pool house here with us. We will find her some sort of suitable job through one of our friends. And then, after a suitable time has passed, we will revisit the subject of her returning to school.
Where are you going?
This responsibility means that Rory has to always meet the expectations of her family and others. So, being smart becomes an essential part of her identity as a character. In later seasons, we see how this desire to always be a high achiever overshadows Rory's ability to develop emotionally. As a viewer, I was initially drawn to Gilmore Girls because of how Rory was portrayed as this quiet and smart girl. But as an adult, I've come to realize how the heavy emphasis on the smart girl aesthetic actually makes Rory feel one-dimensional as a character. At times, it doesn't actually feel like Rory is even fully acknowledged as a person by others on the Gilmore Girls series, unless she's playing into the smart girl role.
Those people, they didn't even RSVP. That's not right. This is for our boys. They need to make a donation.
Tough night for you, huh?
Shira's one thing. I can deal with her, but Mitchum, I can't see him. I can't face him. It's too much. After what he did, what he said to me.
What did he say to you?
If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have...
You wouldn't have what? Rory?
Nothing. Nothing. He's just... They're just not the nicest people.
Well, the rich never are.
Rory's relationship with her family and boyfriends shows how she has this habit where she morphs into whatever other people want her to be. This can be seen in moments where Rory suppresses her own interests and feelings to cater to what will cause the least amount of stress for her family or what will make her boyfriend happy. For example, the thing that seems to drive Rory to the brink in the Deer Hunters episode is the fact that up until the parent-teacher conference, she didn't have the guts to tell Lorelai that she was failing English. The fact that Rory knew that the Friday dinners was her mother trying to make peace with Emily and Richard to keep her at Chilton meant she often tried extra hard not to add stress to Lorelai's plate. So she doesn't want to burst Lorelai's bubble that she isn't as smart as her mother has always thought she is. And because of this, she suffers in silence. And it's only when Lorelai finds out randomly at the parent-teachers conference that Rory comes clean. I found this scene to be interesting because Gilmore Girls fans are fed this idea that Lorelai and Rory are unnaturally close thanks to their mother-daughter banter and inside jokes. However, this doesn't always seem to be true when you look closer at the way they hold secrets from each other. Miller's theory would suggest that Rory's intense drive to succeed may stem from a lack of an authentic emotional connection with her mother, since Lorelai only thinks of Rory as a brainiac and a means to get back at her parents instead of a person with their own life to live. But we can also see that it's not just Lorelai who won't let Rory fail, it's also her grandparents and the people in Stars Hollow who stifle Rory's potential growth. Rory's grandparents play a role in shaping her sense of self around her achievements too, because Richard and Emily have their own expectations for Rory, and they often end up treating her as an extension of themselves, or just as a symbol of the family's success and prestige. Richard in particular imposes high expectations on Rory, and is often critical of her choices when they don't align with his idea of success. And both he and Emily are especially hypercritical of Rory if she makes a decision they think is too much like something Lorelai would do.
Exactly. Rory is special.
Well, I know that Rory's special.
Got it. Dean is special too, Grandpa.
Rory.
You don't even know him.
I know enough.
No, you don't. Dean is incredible, and he's special to me, and I bring him here, and you attack him.
I will not be spoken to like that in my house.
Richard, here, give her the book.
This family has standards. You live up to them, and you should expect that everyone you spend time with live up to them also. You are a gifted girl with immense promise, and you should learn very early that certain people can hold you back.
Grandpa, stop it. You cannot treat Dean this way.
Sorry, excuse me.
This underlining message that she must never mess up too badly constantly shows the viewer and Rory that her worth is mainly tied to her ability to meet her family's expectations, that she be smart and successful. This dynamic reflects the broader societal pressure that Miller describes in the drama of The Gifted Child, where the gifted child's value is essentially placed on external achievements, rather than their emotional well-being or individual desires. As we can see in this Deer Hunter episode in season 1 of Gilmore Girls, because no one ever allows Rory to stumble for too long without them rushing in to save her, Rory never gets to experience a natural defeat early in life to build character and give her the natural cushioning the average child would build over time. And I think this is why the situation with Mitchum is inevitably what breaks Rory. Because everyone around her is always focused on shielding Rory from disappointments and only seeing her as this highly intelligent person, she often lacks the emotional maturity to process her own desires and emotions. This causes Rory's emotional maturity to be stunted by the end of the series, and it leads to an inner conflict where Rory is never able to find her true self beyond the intellectual expectations placed on her even after she's flunked out of Yale, and we see her again in her early 30s. When you compare this to a person like Jess, who is constantly being looked down upon by the residents of Stars Hollow and who has several setbacks in life early on, you get the feeling that by not giving Rory any real conflict early on, the showrunners didn't actually expect Rory to succeed by the end of the show.
And your rant was absolutely true, without the colorful embellishments. Of course, we do set impossible standards, and such standards do foster highly competitive children. However, that is life, and that is Chilton.
Rules can change. You can change them.
I told your daughter when she came here that this place was not for everyone and might not be for her. I will now tell you the same thing.
Okay.
She doesn't have to be here. She doesn't have to go to Harvard. Maybe she shouldn't. If she can't handle the pressure, she should leave.
But my car hit the bench.
Your car hit the bench because that Jess was driving.
Oh, well, yeah, but...
That boy is a walking natural disaster. They should name a tornado after him.
But he didn't cause it, Taylor.
Rory, you don't have to explain a thing to me. I know that there's absolutely no way that you would be involved in something like that if it weren't for that Sal Mineo wannabe. Believe me, Chachi and Chachi alone will be held responsible for that incident.
Up on Gilmore Girls is the stark difference between how Rory is received in Stars Hollow versus how she is often shunned at Chilton, and by proxy in Emily and Richard's WASP circles. Rory is idolized in Stars Hollow, to the point you'd think as a viewer that no other kids exist in the town besides her. But in the rigid world of Chilton, she frequently experiences pushback from those around her. And this could have been a perfect dichotomy to help Rory's character develop if it wasn't for Lorelai and Emily's meddling and constant desire to pull Rory back into the worship bubble their family and the Stars Hollow townsfolk have created around Rory. According to Miller, there's this theory that gifted children are often left to figure things out on their own in lieu of having a soft space to land where they can fully express themselves and explore their emotional vulnerability. While we Gilmore Girls fans know that Stars Hollow is this idyllic, cozy place that constantly idolizes Rory as this golden child, it didn't really hit me until I was an adult rewatching the show how stifling this must have been for Rory. I mean, even if Rory wanted to, how could she ever really be a normal teenager who goes through a rebellious phase like Jess or Lane when so many people don't ever let her break out of the box they put her in? Heck, even when Rory breaks up with Dean and cheats with him once he's married, no one in Stars Hollow ever really gives her any blowback or chastises her in any way outside of his mother-in-law. And even when this happens, Lorelai is offended by the woman's rightful disgust with Rory and goes off on her, insinuating that it's not Rory's fault she broke up someone's marriage.
Pull back, lady.
There aren't hundreds of other boys in the world. You have to go after her husband?
Okay, stop attacking my daughter right now. You're upset. I get it, but you do not do this.
She slept with my son-in-law. She broke up a marriage. Are you proud?
She did not break up a marriage.
What do you know of this?
Enough. I know Rory.
Well, all I know is that now my Lindsay is devastated. Dean is back with his parents. Lives are destroyed, and you and your daughter can go to hell.
In contrast, we briefly see Lane and Jess constantly be chastised by their parents and the adults in Stars Hollow for regular teenage rebellion. This general discipline, while annoying to me as a teenager, also feels more realistic now watching Gilmore Girls as a grown-up. Because even though Luke and Mrs. Kim's chastisement of Jess and Lane was sometimes harsh in the moment, Gilmore Girls fans also see that it goes a long way in helping Jess and Lane find their way as adults. This is because Lane and Jess got a chance to spread their wings as teenagers and try on new identities and hobbies as they were maturing. Rory never seemed new identities. In fact, I don't honestly think she had any type of a safe space in Stars Hollow or in her family to be fully herself, or to express her confusion or fears outside of her studies as a teenager without being expected to maintain a certain level of success. And what's even crazier is that Rory is never made to handle conflict without having her family, or someone like Luke, immediately step in to handle the situation for her. This meant she never had to deal with the consequences of her actions until things spiral out of control in the later seasons of Gilmore Girls and A Year in the Life. To this point, Miller argues that gifted children like Rory often experience emotional neglect from those around them because the gifted child's intellectual abilities overshadow their emotional needs in their family's eyes. And because Rory is only recognized for being gifted, she is not emotionally nurtured and given few opportunities to develop beyond the scope of her achievement. Now, for this reason, Rory's decisions often feel half-baked. Viewers of Gilmore Girls can see this in the fact that Rory always follows a pre-prescribed traditional path for academic success others have chosen for her or that look good on paper. So, we see her decide to go to Yale over Harvard, allowing her to fit more easily into her family's legacy at the school. And even in her job choice, the only reason Rory seemed to choose journalism was because of the prestige it brought versus actually having any real passion for the career. When Mitchum asks her why she chose it, all she can say is that she wants to be a journalist like Christiane Amanpour, which isn't really a solid answer. It's more about the image of success that Amanpour represents to Rory, and not really about a real passion for writing. On the other hand, because Jess and Lane aren't seen as prodigies or even really expected to amount to anything, we get to see them develop normally and explore their interests in a range of things. For Lane, this is shown in her musical pursuits, while Jess, who has similar aspirations to Rory of becoming a writer, gets to do random things like imitating his favorite beat poets by going on an ill-advised road trip inspired by Jack Kerouac to actively engaging in arguments with Luke that show that his parental figure actually thinks of him as a full human being. Both these teenagers are able to exist as full humans and not caricatures of themselves, unlike the way Rory is treated in the series. And while some viewers may push back and say Lane and Jess aren't widely successful, I'd argue that the characters had more realistic upbringings, even if they were more restricted than Rory's as teenagers. In a way, the forced isolation Rory experiences at Chilton when she first gets there is harder to digest because she's not used to having anyone not embrace her. So, when Max refuses to allow Rory to take her test after she's late in the Deer Hunters episode, she acts in a maladaptive way where she throws a tantrum and goes off on Max and screams at her classmates, totally unprovoked while they're all just trying to take their test. The fact that this simple disciplining measure foreshadows her reaction to Mitchum's critique and the boat incident in season 5 shows that outside of her intelligence, Rory doesn't really actually have anything else to fall back on in her identity. It's almost as if Rory feels that if she's not the smartest person in the room, she can't be of value to anyone else.
I thought about getting a master's years ago, a PhD, but I was impatient. I wanted to get out into the world.
Yes, you were always internally stronger than everyone else. I suppose you get that from your mother. She was a real spitfire.
Still is.
We all go through bad stretches.
Oh, no, I'm not going through a bad stretch.
Throughout Gilmore Girls, Rory struggles to define her identity. She experiences moments of doubt and confusion, especially as she transitions from high school to college, and then into the real world in later seasons. These moments of uncertainty are compounded by the expectations Rory faces from both her family and her neighbors. Rory's choices are often influenced by what she thinks others expect of her, rather than what she actually wants for herself. In psychoanalyzing Rory through the lens of the drama of the gifted child, we see how her character's intellectual abilities are cultivated, while her emotional maturity is often allowed to fall by the wayside. This mirrors Miller's argument in the drama of the gifted child, that gifted children's true self is stifled, because they are taught to only meet the needs and expectations of others consciously and unconsciously, instead of thinking about who they want to be as people early in life. In moments like Deer Hunters, the obvious choice was to listen to outside voices like Chilton's headmaster and Mitchum and use these moments of rationality to build Rory's emotional maturity and character. However, because Rory's family only ever focuses on her being this smart girl and ignores the other parts of her development, Rory suffers. Due to these things, I'd argue that Rory's perceived success becomes a way for others, particularly her mother and grandparents, to meet their own emotional needs by living vicariously through Rory as a gifted child. And because of this codependency with her family, Rory never develops a true sense of self, and her desires are often buried under the weight of her grandparents and Lorelai's expectations. Shouldering these expectations causes Rory to struggle with ever becoming emotionally fulfilled or having a sense of self-expression beyond what she thinks a successful Shouldering these expectations causes Rory to person is or does, which is why her character's identity stays stagnant throughout the Gilmore Girls franchise. In this way, Rory embodies the conflict described by Alice Miller of being a gifted child who excels at meeting external demands while neglecting ever developing emotional maturity. For this reason, as a teenager and young adult, we often see Rory in an arrested development state where she appears to be trapped by her need to appear perfect or successful. Ultimately, Rory doesn't ever seem to find her way by the end of a year in the life, and instead, we see her slipping into Lorelai's footprints as a single mother by happenstance. From here, we even see Rory usurping Lorelai's story as fodder for her book idea, instead of actively going out to live her own life, to get inspiration for her writing. Rory's inability to face the challenges of failure was indicative of
kid. No, I did think this through. I am not a kid. This was not a whim. I sat down last night and outlined the first 5 chapters just like that. That's a sign.
What sign? That this is it. This is what I am supposed to do.
No. I'm sorry. I have to. Without this, it's grad school or groveling for jobs that I don't want. Find another subject.
To me of her character's lack of a persona outside of being the resident gifted child in Stars Hollow. Because of this lack of personal development in her character, I'd argue Rory's failure was always inevitable because her family and neighbors never let her be a whole person when she was growing up. This decision severely stunts Rory's character's development throughout Gilmore Girls. So by the time we see her at 30, Rory is still searching for fulfillment and trying to find an identity outside of just being the gifted kid. And since she is just starting to do all the hard emotional development that people like Jess and Lane had already experienced in her 30s, when viewers see Rory in a year in the life, she's aimless while her peers are all comfortably settled into their adult lives and career paths. What do you all think? Would you still live in Stars Hollow? Or do you think Rory's village did right by her? Leave a comment down below with your thoughts, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos.